Over the past couple of weeks, I've been looking at a topic I've called It Doesn't Really Matter. And I highlighted that there are a number of things that often hinder us or stop us from really living in the plan of God for our lives. I mentioned the fact that, I referred to a portion of scripture, John chapter 4, where Jesus met a woman and he had this conversation with this woman. Eventually, he spoke about a number of things. He addressed a number of things in her life, highlighted those things, and he now made her realize that those things didn't really matter in the context of achieving God's plan for her life, which meant that irrespective of the opinion she had about herself, irrespective of her past, irrespective of what people viewed her as, those things, though they might have been valid, didn't really matter in the context of God's plan. But there was one thing that she had to do, and that's one thing that we need to do as well. That was, all these things wouldn't really matter in your life, like your past and whatever view you have about yourself, if you and I can agree with God's plan for our lives. So it brings me to this final question. What is God's plan for your life? Very simple. Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11, I'll paraphrase. God begins to tell us that he says something. He says, I know the plans that I have for you. Plans to prosper you, plans to give you hope and a future. There's another portion of scripture as well, Jeremiah chapter 1 verse 5. And that portion of scripture, paraphrasing again, says, he was telling Jeremiah, before you were conceived, I knew you and I ordained you to be a prophet. Now, what does that mean? What does God's plan mean? It's not predestination where God forces you and I to accept and walk in his plan. No, God has given us free will as well. So it's a choice that we need to make on a daily basis to follow his plan for our lives. So what is the morale of what I'm talking about today? To summarize, I'm saying that there's nothing that can affect or can stop God's plan in your life. Really, nothing really matters. However, for that to work or for that to be true in your life and in my life, you and I have to agree with God's plan. And what's God's plan? I referred to it earlier in Jeremiah 29:11. Plans to prosper us, plans to give us hope and a future. So, what do? Simply agree with God's plan for our lives. That way we'll be able to fulfill everything God has spoken concerning us, concerning you and I, irrespective of our past, irrespective of the view that people have about us, or irrespective of the view we even have about ourselves. Those things cannot hinder God's plan as long as we agree with God's plan for our lives.